Right, let's make another video. Let's do one on, we'll look at some of the work we've already done, but how we recreate that using a custom module. And then we'll just sort of take things from there and keep on kind of moving forward and just see how we can improve things. So at the moment we've looked at content types and how we create new ones, and we created one called news. We used the views module to position or to create a list of outputs and to produce that as a HTML page and also as a JSON feed. And we also produced a block output of content as well. So, and that's great. We haven't written a line of code. Some people might argue that it's not even developer work. If you're not writing code, why does it need a developer to do it? I would argue that using something like views, it requires a certain mindset. It may not be actual development work, but it requires a certain understanding about how data is structured and how you relate things together and the kind of output you're trying to look for in terms, whether it's just URL conventions or what fields are, what content is, what relationships are, all that kind of stuff. It does imply some kind of technical and underlying technical understanding, even if you're not actually putting that to task in code. But this time we are going to write some code. We're going to create custom modules. So let's stop talking and do a bit of work. So here's our site as it was before. We're going to create a custom module. So if we're looking at this, so I've got Sublime open here. We've got our Drupal structure. We've got the sites folder where all of the custom and contrib code goes. Within the all folder, we've got our libraries, modules, and themes folder, which is where any custom stuff or custom or contrib stuff would go there. We've got no contrib themes at the moment, but no contrib libraries. We've got a few contrib modules. We installed context. We installed Devel, we installed email, we installed views, and we installed views data source. CTools got installed because it was a dependency of views, and it was actually also a dependency of context. So we're going to, just to separate the contrib modules from the custom modules, we're going to create a new folder in here, and we're going to call that custom. Don't have to do it this way, it's just a convention. The underscore just means it'll appear at the top of our list, so it's easy to find, and custom because it's going to be where the custom modules go. We're going to create a new folder inside there, which will be where our module will go, and we're going to call that my news. So if we wanted to, we could just create loads more kind of folders in there that the names of each of our modules. One thing I would say here is try and make the names descriptive. No longer than they need to be, but long enough to be descriptive. So, the last thing you want is to kind of come back to this and find you've got a load of names of things that are, not particularly descriptive. So you've got a module that's called do stuff or, whatever, do something. It doesn't help. Make it descriptive. There will be, and it's I'm going to get on my soapbox now, but it is coming up with naming conventions for things is not to be taken for granted. It seems like such a simple thing, but it's something which people struggle with quite a lot. It's a skill that's worth developing. It's worth, if you're not sure about what to name something, take the time to work it out. Eventually, thinking up names for stuff will come easy, but don't call things do stuff. But anyway, let's go. So we've got a folder. It's called My News. There are two files that we need to have to create our module. One is an info file, and it needs to match the name of the module, and it's got an extension of .info. And we need another file which is going to again match the name of the file. So that's My News, and it's going to be .module. Now, a .info file tells Drupal what is there. And the .module file contains the code. You can split the code into other things, but the basic format is you've got an info file which tells you the metadata about the module, and you've got the module file which is your PHP code. So what goes in an info file, what goes in a module file? Well, the easy way to kind of start with that is if we just go and look at another info file. So let's look at devel.info. We can take all that information from there, open our one, paste it in there, job's good. We've now got the info structure. I can tell you that whilst we need that, and we'll put a description in there of this module outputs our news content. I'm going to make the package name is basically the grouping of where this occurs, and you'll see this in action in a few moments. So I'm going to call it Damien's custom modules. Requires core 7.x. That's fine. We're going to get rid of all that because we don't need it. I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to get rid of those things. Version 7, the version number is the version of our module, so I'm going to call that, but in fact I'm going to call it version 0.1 because I'm not even going to call that, it's not even a release yet. So we've got a name, we've got a description, the package it belongs to, a core requirement, and the version of our module. So we've got no code, but we've got an info file. This is what Drupal thinks of that. So we go to the wrong place. Let's go to modules. We've got all the core modules. We've got all of views, fields, development, Damien's custom modules. That's the package name. So if you had 5 separate modules, and they all had their package of Damien's custom modules in the info file, they would end up grouped together within the modules page. So it's just kind of a nice, elegant way of kind of grouping things together, making it easy when people are kind of trying to see, well, are these modules related? Well, yes, they are, because they all come under Damien's custom modules, and we can see there our version number, and we've got to see the description. So it helps to have these things there. So we can enable it now. We could either enable it using Drush, or we can enable it just from the GUI. I'm going to enable that from there, and we'll see that there we go. See, we've enabled our module. Nothing's any different because our module doesn't have any code, doesn't do anything. So we need to do something now to make our module do something. So we start off. We need an opening PHP tag. We don't use a closing PHP tag. There's a very good reason we don't use it, and I have no idea what it is. I'm sure there's a very good reason somewhere, but I remember reading it once, but I can't remember it now. But whatever it is, you don't need to close it. So, why don't we create a page for a start off, something that just outputs something. So to basically make something respond to a URL, we get our first introduction to the Drupal hook system. And in this case, when you want to respond to a URL in some kind of almost like router fashion, or router if you're of the American persuasion, then you use the obviously titled hook menu. So I've just been joined by a cat. You use the obviously titled hook menu. Why would you not? Why would it not be called hook menu? We're not actually creating a menu item here. We're just making something that responds to a URL. Now, the hooks normally follow the convention. I think they probably always follow the convention of the name of your module underscore the name of the hook, which in this case is menu. It takes no arguments, so it's simple as that. So we've now got something which allows us to, which will be called by Drupal. That having that there will mean that Drupal will call that when it's trying to kind of do its menu stuff. Magic. We need an items array there. It doesn't have to be called out items. We can call anything you want, really. It's just an array. And we are going to add an item to that, and we're going to call it my news. And we're going to say that equals an array. And that array is going to contain two things. Well, it's going to contain one thing for a start off. It's going to contain a page callback. page callback is a reference to a function. So we're going to create. So I'm going to create a function here that matches that. So it could be called anything. It could be called banana, but it's going to match that, and that's going to be what generates our page content. So for the moment, I'm just going to return hello world, and we're going to see what happens. So that's the items, mind you, that's our URL. That's the thing that we want it to respond to. So when I come here, I'll just go here and go my news, and that says page not found. And it probably says page not found because it's not been. I think it only basically picks these up kind of on certain kind of trigger things, something. If we, there is definitely a way of kind of shortcut to this. I can never remember what it is. But if I disable the My News module and I re-enable it, we will now see that we still can't find it. Isn't that great? Isn't that wonderful? What have we done wrong? Done something wrong here. There should be no underscore there. Come on, we can do this. We can do this. It's making a liar out of me now. Such an idiot. Such an idiot. I don't even know how I'll make it through the day sometimes. Return items. Okay. We're there. So I wonder if, let's just see if I can do it on clear cache. Yes. Excellent. So we've now got over our first few problems of my incompetence, and we've now got something which is actually responding to that. And the first thing it's doing is it's throwing us an access denied. The reason why it's throwing an access denied is because we've not specified a permission for this that is met by the user. Even though we're logged in as the admin user, we're still getting access denied. Now, we can specify for this some permissions. We're saying that in order to be able to access this page, one needs to have the permission access content. Lovely. Fingers crossed, this will work. And it doesn't. Isn't that magic? Clear cache again. So this is the beauty of Drush. You can just clear cache quite easily. There we go. Hello world. So we've now got our content coming out. That's all. It's just literally just outputting a little bit of just a tiny amount of content into there. That's all it's doing. So maybe we'd like to have a title for the page, and we can add a title to the page by specifying the item here title, and we can call that My News. And because we're adding text there, one of the things that you'll see around lots of Drupal content is the function T. T basically is just the global translation function, which means that if you pass any of your content through the T function, then it becomes available to Drupal's fairly comprehensive translation engine. That's kind of really good to do. So as a kind of best practice, your content should go through the T function. It won't stop it from being output or do anything funny to it. It'll just mean it gets output. And I'm going to pass hello world into the T function as well. Have to forgive me for using single quotes and double quotes interchangeably. I tend to kind of swap around all the time. So now let's again click cache. We could probably turn off the or turn on the rebuild theme registry every time. That would possibly fix it, or not fix it, but force it to do that without some to clear cache. But we'll just clear the cache for the time being. So now we've got some content being output. But what about if we wanted to actually output something more interesting than hello world? So one of the things we can do here is output some, let's say for example, we want to find all of the node content and make that node content appear in a list. What we could do there is use some quite funky little Drupal code, and I accept this is kind of getting a little bit kind of adventurous, but it just shows some of the stuff that you can do. So I'm going to bring in this this code here, which will basically allow us to kind of query Drupal's kind of internal system to pull out kind of node-based content, and this will start to kind of make sense in a moment. I didn't even write this code. This code even is more or less kind of stuff that I kind of found on the internet about kind of how to do this kind of stuff. We've got some. So what we're doing here is we're running a query, and that query is then building up effectively something akin to a SQL query, and it's saying that we want to basically pull out node content, and we want node content where the node type is news. Internally, kind of Drupal uses sometimes a different language, so it uses the notion of bundle to mean kind of like the content type, which is kind of I find quite interesting that it uses, again, sometimes different language to mean different things. We're only pulling out published content, which is good. We're ordering the content by when it was created, and we're pulling out first 10 items. And we're then going to run that query, and we're then just checking to see if we've got a result. If we've got a proper result, then we get all the node IDs from there, and we then actually load those nodes. So it basically gets a list of stuff to load, and then it loads it. These are quite intensive kind of tasks, so it's not to be just done on a whim. But we're then going to output some content here, like so. So here we're basically just building up a list. So we've got an unordered list, and we're going to loop through our news items, and we're going to output the title of the news item and the body of the news item. So see that we're using the T function to output stuff, and also welcome to this first example of the rather curious structure of some of Drupal's internal objects. I'm not even going to bother to go into this. Just be aware that kind of sometimes you try and kind of work with objects in Drupal, and they have some quite complicated internal structures, and there's a reason for all of this. None of this is kind of there just to kind of confuse you, although it will confuse you. There is a method to it. I'm not going into it, mainly because I don't know. So we output the content there. Now we might, as a result of that, see something output on the page, and we get a syntax error. Isn't that good? So I should say in order to kind of allow this stuff to work, by default, when Vagrant sets up the VM, display errors, the PHP directive display errors is turned off, which is good practice for production environments. But if you're debugging code and you're developing, then having display errors turned on obviously is a pretty quick way to find out your problems as you go. So I've turned display errors on. So what's wrong here? So we've got a semicolon there, which we don't want. And there we go. Unordered list. If I just inspect that, we can see we've got our titles, we've got our P tags, we've got our LIs and all that kind of good stuff. So we've now got content outputs as a list. We don't have a pager like we have from views, but we've just got some basic page output. So you can pretty much see straight away how much, I've kind of created this code here just to get that content out on the page, and we don't even have a pager on there. So you can see how easy views makes things and how much stuff it just gives you for free. So if you've got no reason not to use views to do this stuff, it makes so much sense. But if there is a good reason for creating a custom module and not using views, then obviously this is the way you do it. I think I'm probably going to leave it there for the moment, and in the next few videos we'll kind of extend on that a little bit further. Just to recap, on this video we've covered the creation of a custom module, the format of the info file, the creation of the module file, the use of hook menu. So we've used our first hook within the Drupal system, which is hook menu. We've created our URL. We've got a callback for that, which we've given our users access to, and we've created a function which is our callback, and that queries and just pulls out a list of nodes that match the news node type, and it outputs that content as HTML. Hope that's been useful.